The observation deck of the Time's Eternal Dominion Times was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Ji-woo pressed her hand against the cold glass, watching the small pod tumble through space toward the gas giant below. Inside that pod was Han Sol. And she knew he was already dead. The Vrothan Empire didn't make mistakes when they executed someone. Telemetry shows pod integrity failing, the computer voice announced. Altitude: 12,000 meters. Hull breach detected. Beside Ji-woo, Dae-jung clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. "This is murder," he whispered. "My brother didn't sabotage anything." Ji-woo wanted to comfort him, but what could she say? Han Sol had been the only human with access to the Dreadnought's reactor core during the critical hours before it exploded. 400 Vrothan soldiers had died in that blast. Someone had to pay. And the Empire always chose the easiest target. Commander Thexal stood at the center of the observation deck, his obsidian scales gleaming under the artificial lights. He watched the pod's descent with what might have been satisfaction. The Vrothan didn't have facial expressions humans could read easily, but Ji-woo had learned to recognize the slight tilt of his head that meant he was pleased. "Justice is served," Thexal said, his voice a deep rumble. "Let this be a lesson to all who serve the Empire. Betrayal will not be tolerated." "He didn't betray anyone," Dae-jung said, louder this time. "You killed an innocent man." Thexal turned slowly, his eyes, yellow and slitted like a reptile's, fixed on Dae-jung. "Your brother confessed under interrogation. He was tortured." Dae-jung took a step forward, but Ji-woo grabbed his arm. "Don't," she whispered urgently. "They'll kill you too." Thexal's mouth opened slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth. It was the Vrothan equivalent of a smile. "The human speaks wisdom. You should listen to her, pilot. Your brother's crime is his own. Unless you wish to share his fate?" Dae-jung's whole body trembled, but he stayed silent. Ji-woo could feel the rage radiating from him, like heat. The computer spoke again. "Pod disintegration complete. No life signs detected. Subject confirmed. Deceased." Thexal nodded. "Remove the body from the records. Mark the incident as closed." He swept past them toward the exit, his guards following behind. "You humans may leave. Your services are no longer required on this vessel." When they were alone, Dae-jung collapsed against the window. "He's really gone," he said. "Han Sol is really gone." Ji-woo put her hand on his shoulder. She had known Han Sol for 3 years. He had been the best engineer she'd ever met, the kind of person who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. He had also been kind, always ready with a terrible joke to lighten the mood during long shifts. The galaxy was darker without him in it. "We should go back to the colony," she said quietly. "There's nothing more we can do here." Dae-jung nodded numbly. Together they walked through the corridors of the flagship, past Vrothan soldiers who didn't even look at them. To the Empire, humans were barely worth noticing. They were new to the galactic community, their technology primitive, their lifespans short. The Vrothan had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. What were humans compared to that? The shuttle ride back to Threshold 9 took 2 hours. Neither of them spoke. Dae-jung stared out the window at the stars, and Ji-woo tried not to think about Han Sol's last moments. Had he been afraid? Had he known there was no escape? Threshold 9 was a mining colony on the edge of Vrothan space. 20,000 humans lived there, working in the deep mines that pulled rare metals from the planet's crust. It wasn't a comfortable life, but it was honest work, and the pay was good enough to send money back to Earth. They landed at the main spaceport just as the colony's sun was setting. The sky turned purple and orange, casting long shadows across the metal buildings. Bo-Ra was waiting for them at the landing pad. She was the colony's chief medical officer, and she had been Han Sol's friend too. "I heard," she said simply. "I'm sorry." Daejung just walked past her toward the housing complex. Ji-woo watched him go. Knowing there was nothing anyone could say to help, Bo-ra fell into step beside Ji-woo. How did it happen? Orbital drop into a gas giant. The pod broke apart in the atmosphere. Ji-woo's voice was flat. Standard Wraithen execution. For saboteurs. One's tact. Wraithen? One. But he didn't sabotage anything. We know that. They don't care. They walked in silence for a while. The colony was quiet at this hour. Most of the miners were below ground on their shifts. The streets were nearly empty. What will happen now? Bo-ra asked. Nothing, Ji-woo said. The case is closed. The Empire got their justice. We go back to work and try to forget. Can you forget? Ji-woo didn't answer. Could anyone forget watching a friend die? 3 days passed. Ji-woo threw herself into her work as liaison officer, processing reports and coordinating supply shipments. Daejung took sick leave and stayed in his quarters. Bo-ra checked on him regularly, but he wouldn't talk to anyone. On the third day, Ji-woo was in her office when the emergency communication system crackled to life. At first, she thought it was a malfunction. The signal was weak and full of static. Then she heard a voice. A human voice. This is Han Sol broadcasting from Threshold 9 Surface Coordinates 77 Alpha. Requesting immediate pickup. Repeat. This is Han Sol. I'm alive. Ji-woo's coffee mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. She lunged for the communication panel, her fingers flying over the controls. Han Sol? Is that really you? Hey, Ji-woo. Even through the static, she could hear the smile in his voice. Sorry for the wait. Had to build a transmitter from scratch. You're alive. You're actually alive. Her hands were shaking. How is that possible? The telemetry showed your pod disintegrated. Yeah, about that. He laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. Turns out those Wraithen escape pods are really poorly designed. I made some modifications on the way down. Modifications? You were in a failing pod falling into a gas giant. Best time to work, really. Very motivating. Ji-woo was laughing and crying at the same time. Stay on this channel. I'm sending a rescue shuttle right now. Can you hold position? Not going anywhere. Built a nice little shelter from the pod wreckage. You should see it. Ji-woo. I'm actually pretty proud. She switched channels and called Daejung. When he answered, his voice was rough from sleep and grief. What? What? Your brother is alive. Silence. Then. What? Han Sol is alive. He's on the surface. Get to the spaceport now. The rescue took 4 hours. When the shuttle finally brought Han Sol back to the colony, half the population was waiting at the landing pad. The doors opened, and he stepped out. He looked terrible. His clothes were torn and burned. Bandages covered his arms and part of his face. He was limping, and dried blood stained his jacket. But he was smiling. Daejung ran to him and wrapped him in a hug so tight Han Sol gasped. You're crushing my broken ribs, he wheezed. How? Daejung pulled back, tears streaming down his face. How did you survive? Daejung, Han Sol's smile widened. I'm an engineer, little brother. I fix impossible problems. This was just another day at work. Bo-ra pushed through the crowd with a medical scanner. You need to get to the infirmary right now. You're going into shock. In a minute. Han Sol looked at Ji-woo. His expression turned serious. We need to talk. All of us. Because I found something in that pod's data core before I crashed. Something the Empire really didn't want anyone to see. What? Ji-woo asked. Proof. Han Sol said. Proof. That I didn't sabotage that dreadnought. And proof of who really did. Above them, the stars glittered cold and distant. Somewhere up there, Commander Thexal was about to receive a very disturbing message. The dead man was calling. Bo-ra's medical bay was cramped and filled with the smell of antiseptic. Hansol sat on the examination table while she worked on his injuries, her scanner moving over his body in precise patterns. Each beep made her frown deeper. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung, second-degree burns over 40% of your body, and severe dehydration, she said. Hansol, you should be dead 5 times over. I've been told that a lot lately, he replied, wincing as she pressed a regeneration pad against his chest. Jiwoo and Daejung stood nearby, watching. Taemin, the mining supervisor, had joined them. He was a broad-shouldered man with gray in his hair and a reputation for being fair to his workers. He also had connections to groups that weren't entirely loyal to the Vrathan Empire. Tell us what happened, Taemin said. From the beginning, Han Sol took a careful breath, mindful of his damaged lung. The pod was designed to fail. That's the whole point of a Vrathan execution. They want you to know you're going to die, and they want it to be slow enough that you suffer. Charming people, Daejung muttered. When they sealed me inside, I had maybe 10 minutes before the atmospheric entry would begin. I used 8 of those minutes running diagnostics on every system. Hansol's eyes grew distant, remembering. The power core was dying. Life support was already offline. The stabilizers were programmed to shut down at exactly 12,000 meters altitude. So you were in a metal coffin falling toward a planet made of poison gas, Jiwoo said. How do you fix that? You don't fix it. You work with what you have. Hansol smiled slightly. The pod had a basic computer, right? And computers run on electricity. Electricity generates heat. I stripped the insulation from the power cables and wrapped them around my arms and chest. Bora stopped working and stared at him. You used your own body? As a conductor? Thermal energy is still energy. I routed it back into the power core. It bought me an extra 3 minutes of processing time. He looked at his bandaged arms. Also gave me these lovely burns, but that's the price of not dying. 3 minutes to do what? Taemin asked. Rewrite the stabilizer program. I couldn't stop them from shutting down. But I could change when they shut down. Instead of all at once, I made them fail in sequence, starting with the ventral thrusters. Jiwoo was beginning to understand. You used the failures as thrust control. Exactly. Each system that died gave me a small burst of venting gas. I used those bursts to adjust my angle of descent. It wasn't much, but it was enough to aim for a softer landing zone. The methane swamps, Taemin said, nodding. Smart. The liquid would slow your impact. That was the theory. The practice was a lot more violent. Hansol touched his side gently. At 8,000 meters, the main chute deployed. It was damaged, but functional. At 2,000 meters, I triggered the emergency beacon core to overload. Wait, Daejung said. You made the distress beacon explode? Had to make them think I was dead. The explosions scattered debris everywhere. From orbit, it looked like the pod had completely disintegrated. That's what their sensors reported. Hansol's expression hardened. I needed them to think they'd won. Because you knew something was wrong, Jiwoo said softly. Because I knew I'd been framed. Hansol gestured to Bora, who retrieved a small data drive from a secured cabinet. This is what I pulled from the pod's computer before I crashed. It's a black box recorder. Every Vrathan vessel has one. Even escape pods. They record everything. He handed the drive to Jiwoo. That contains the complete diagnostic logs from the Dreadnought reactor core. The logs that show exactly what caused the explosion. And, Taemin leaned forward, it wasn't a mechanical failure. It wasn't human error. It was a deliberate sabotage using military-grade access codes. Hansol's voice was cold. Vrathan. Military codes. Someone inside the Empire destroyed that ship and blamed me for it. The room fell silent. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the colony. Miners returning from their shifts. The rumble of ore haulers moving through the streets. If this is true, Taemin said slowly, then this isn't just about you. This is about something much bigger. I know. Han Sol took the drive back. That's why I sent the transmission. I need everyone to know I'm alive. I need the Empire to react. Rever. I'm alive, Empire to react. Rever 1. They'll send someone, Jiwoo said. As soon as Commander Thexal receives your message, he'll send someone to finish the job. I'm counting on it. Daejung grabbed his brother's shoulder. Have you lost your mind? They tried to kill you once already, and they failed. That tells me something important. Han Sol met his brother's eyes. It tells me I can survive them. And more than that, I can beat them. Bo-Ra finished her treatment and stepped back. You need rest. At least 3 days of bed rest before you should even think about moving around. I'll rest when I'm sure we're safe. Han Sol stood up, swaying slightly. Right now, we need to prepare. Taemin, can you get me supplies? Basic electronics, a fabricator if possible, and any spare parts from the mining equipment. What are you building? Insurance. Han Sol looked at each of them in turn. When the Empire sends their investigator, I want to be ready. I want proof they can't deny, and safeguards they can't bypass. Taemin nodded. I'll have everything delivered to your workshop within the hour. I'm staying with you, Daejung said firmly. No arguments. Fine, Jiwoo. I need you to monitor all official channels. As soon as the Empire responds, I want to know. Already on it, she said. They dispersed, each to their tasks. Bo-Ra made Han Sol promise to return for treatment in the morning, though they both knew he wouldn't. As soon as he was alone in his small workshop, he spread out the components Taemin had delivered and began to work. His hands moved with practiced precision despite the pain. Circuit boards connected to power cells. Transmitters linked to receivers. Lines of code flowed across a small screen, creating programs within programs, safeguards and backups, and encrypted copies. The data from the pod contained more than just the reactor logs. It contained communications between the dreadnought and the flagship. It contained orders and confirmations, and the digital fingerprints of everyone who had accessed the ship's systems in the hours before the explosion. Han Sol traced those fingerprints now, following them through layers of security. There were 3 separate access points, all using valid military credentials. 2 of them he didn't recognize. The third made him stop breathing. Commander Thexal himself had accessed the reactor control system 4 hours before the explosion. Got you, Han Sol whispered. But that raised new questions. Why would a Vrothan commander destroy his own ship? What possible reason could justify killing 400 of his own soldiers? Han Sol copied the data to multiple drives, encrypting each one differently. He created a dead man's switch, a program that would automatically broadcast everything if he didn't input a code every 12 hours. If they killed him, the truth would spread across every communication network in the sector. He was sealing the last data drive when his workshop door opened. Han Sol spun, reaching for a plasma cutter as a weapon. It was Kyung-hee. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation as the colony's best information broker. If you needed to know something, anything, Kyung-hee could find it. For a price. Relax, she said, closing the door behind her. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? Because I heard you came back from the dead, and I wanted to see if it was true. She studied him carefully. Also, because I have information you need. What kind of information? The kind that explains why Commander Thexal tried to kill you. Kyung-hee pulled out a small tablet. 3 months ago, the Empire signed a treaty with Earth, a trade agreement giving humans access to advanced technology in exchange for mining rights on 12 colony worlds. I know about the treaty, but do you know about the opposition to it? There's a faction within the Vrathan military that believes humans are a threat. They think we're advancing too quickly, learning too fast. They want the treaty broken and the human colonies shut down. Han Sol felt ice in his stomach. They destroyed their own ship to frame a human, to create a reason to break the treaty. Worse than that. Kyung-hee's expression was grim. I have sources that say this is just the beginning. The dreadnought was a test. If they succeeded in framing you and getting away with it, they were planning to do the same thing to 3 more ships, each one near a different human colony. That would look like a pattern, like humans were systematically attacking Vrathan vessels, and give them justification for a purge. Kyung-hee met his eyes. They're not just trying to break a treaty, Han-Sol. They're trying to start a genocide. The workshop felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Han-Sol looked at the data drives on his workbench, each one containing proof of a conspiracy that wanted to murder millions of people. Then we stop them, he said quietly. How? Han-Sol smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. By doing what I do best. I find the broken parts, and I fix them. The Vrathan investigator arrived 2 days later. Inquisitor Kreshvan was different from Commander Thexal. Where Thexal was brutal and direct, Kreshvan was careful and methodical. His scales were pale gray instead of black, and his eyes missed nothing. He descended from his ship with an escort of 6 soldiers, all armed with plasma rifles. The colony's main square had been cleared for his arrival. Han-Sol stood waiting, flanked by Jiwoo and Taemin. He had refused to hide, despite everyone's warnings. You are the human called Han-Sol, Kreshvan said. It wasn't a question. I am. You were declared dead 3 days ago. I got better. Kreshvan's head tilted slightly. It might have been curiosity or confusion. Commander Thexel's report states that your escape pod disintegrated in the atmosphere of the gas giant. The telemetry was clear. The telemetry lied. Han-Sol held up a data chip. I have the complete black box recording from the pod. It shows exactly what happened, including my modifications to the descent profile and the controlled explosion I used to fake my death. That is impossible. So, is surviving an orbital drop execution. But here I am. Han-Sol took a step forward. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Kreshvan waved them back. I also have something else. Data from the dreadnought reactor core that exploded. The reactor I supposedly sabotaged. That got the investigators' attention. Show me. They moved to Han-Sol's workshop. It was crowded with 7 people inside, but Kreshvan dismissed 4 of his guards to wait outside. Han-Sol uploaded the data to a display screen. These are the reactor diagnostic logs from 12 hours before the explosion, Han-Sol explained. Watch this access point here. Someone entered the reactor control system using military authorization codes. They bypassed 7 different safety protocols and reprogrammed the cooling system to shut down in stages. The data scrolled across the screen. Kreshvan watched in silence, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. That's not a malfunction, Han-Sol continued. That's deliberate sabotage. And those authorization codes? They're Vrathan military. Command level. This could be falsified. It could be, Han-Sol agreed. But it's not. And I think you know that. Kreshvan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, if what you're showing me is authentic, this is treason at the highest level. Accusing a Vrathan commander of murdering his own soldiers is not something done lightly. I'm not doing it lightly. I'm doing it because it's true. Even if true, this evidence would cause severe diplomatic problems. The treaty between Earth and the Vrathan Empire is already strained. An accusation like this could break it entirely, Jiwoo spoke up. So, you'd rather bury the truth? Let whoever did this get away with murder and attempted genocide? Kreshvan's eyes moved to her. You are the liaison officer. I am. And you support this human's claims? I support the truth, Jiwoo said firmly. Whatever that truth is. Kreshvan seemed to consider this. Then he turned back to Han-Sol. I am placing you in protective custody. You will be transferred to a secure facility, while this matter is investigated properly. Protective custody is just a fancy word for prison, Daejung said. It is a fancy word for protection, Kreshvan corrected. If this conspiracy is real, then Han Sol's life is in danger, as is the life of anyone who has seen this evidence. He was right, and Han Sol knew it. But something about the situation felt wrong. He had survived too much to walk blindly into another trap. "I'll agree to protective custody on one condition," Han Sol said. "The data gets transmitted to the Galactic Concordance immediately, not just to the Vrathan Empire, to neutral observers." Kreshvan's expression was unreadable. "That is not standard procedure. Standard procedure tried to kill me. I'm not interested in standard procedure anymore." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Kreshvan inclined his head slightly. "Agreed. The data will be transmitted to all relevant authorities. Now, you will come with me." They moved Han Sol to a detention facility on the outskirts of the colony. It was a small building, designed to hold drunk miners overnight. Not to secure witnesses in a conspiracy case, but it would have to do. The cell was clean but bare. A cot, a sink, a toilet. A small window looked out over the colony. Han Sol sat on the cot and waited. Kyung-hee found him that night. She appeared outside his window like a ghost, her face barely visible in the darkness. "You need to leave," she whispered. "Now. How did you get past the guards?" "I have my ways." "Listen, Han Sol. I got word from my contacts. Commander Thexol received Kreshvan's report. He's sending a kill team. They'll be here in 6 hours." Han Sol's stomach dropped. Kreshvan said I'd be safe here. Maybe he believed that. Or maybe he's part of it too. Either way, staying here means dying. Kyung-hee pulled out a small cutting torch. "I can get you out. Hyun-woo has people waiting with a transport. We can hide you in the deep mines where the Vrathan sensors can't reach. If I run, it looks like I'm guilty. If you stay, you're dead. Choose which one you prefer." Han Sol thought about the data drives hidden throughout the colony, about the dead man's switch he'd programmed, about Dae-jung and Ji-woo, and all the people who had risked themselves to help him. "Get me out," he said. The cutting torch made quick work of the window bars. Han Sol squeezed through, his broken ribs screaming in protest. Kyung-hee led him through the shadows, avoiding the main streets. They reached a storage building where Hyun-woo was waiting with 3 others. Hyun-woo was tall and scarred, a former Earth military officer who had come to the colonies to escape his past. He led a small resistance cell. Humans who believed the Vrathan Empire would eventually betray them. "Looks like I was right," Hyun-woo said grimly. "The Empire can't be trusted." "Some of them can't," Han Sol corrected. "That doesn't mean all of them." Kreshvan seemed genuine. "Genuine or not, he can't protect you." Hyun-woo gestured to the others. "We're taking you to Mine Shaft 7. It's abandoned. Goes down 3 kilometers. We've set up a safe room there. I can't hide forever. You don't have to. Just long enough to figure out the next move." They traveled in an old mining hauler, its cargo bay converted into a cramped transport. The journey took 40 minutes along rough roads. When they finally descended into Mine Shaft 7, Han Sol felt the weight of rock settling above him. The safe room was carved from solid stone, reinforced with metal beams. It had basic supplies, communication equipment, and a small fabrication unit. Han Sol immediately went to work. "What are you doing?" Hyun-woo asked. "Building evidence they can't ignore." Han Sol's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Someone who opposes the conspiracy. Ralph is a reformist," Kyung-hee confirmed. "He's spoken against the treaty opposition faction publicly. If anyone in the Vrathan military would help us, it's him. And Kyung-hee. And one. Then we need to reach him." Han Sol pulled up a star map. Kyung-hee smiled. "I can get you a line to anyone, anywhere. It'll cost, though. Bill it to the Vrathan Empire. They owe me." While Kyung-hee worked on establishing the secure line, Han Sol continued analyzing the data. He had been looking at the surface evidence, the reactor sabotage, and the access codes, but now he went deeper, tracing the conspiracy's roots. What he found made him cold. There are 12 names here, he said slowly. 12 high-ranking Vrathan officers who accessed secure files about human colony locations, defense capabilities, and population centers, all within the last 3 months. Plus, Buddy C. Lucid. Plus, end quote. Buddy C. Buddy C. Hyunwoo looked over his shoulder. They're planning targets. They're planning an invasion. Hansol highlighted a series of communications. Look at this. They've been stockpiling weapons at a depot in the asteroid belt. Enough firepower to sterilize 3 planets. We need to tell someone, Hyunwoo said. Earth needs to know. Earth is 3 weeks away by the fastest ship. We don't have 3 weeks. Hansol stood up. We need to expose this now, everywhere, so completely that the Empire can't cover it up. And how do we do that? Hansol smiled, and there was something fierce in his expression. We go to the weapons depot. We find physical proof of the conspiracy. And then we broadcast it to every news network, every government, every person in the sector. That's suicide, one of Hyunwoo's people said. The depot will be guarded. Probably. But I survived an execution by orbital drop. I can survive this too. Kyung-hee looked up from her communication terminal. I have Rolf on the line. Encrypted and secure. Hansol moved to the screen. A Vrathan face appeared, younger than Thexol, with brighter eyes and fewer scars. This is Sub-Commander Ralph. Who am I speaking with? My name is Hansol. I'm the human engineer who was executed 3 days ago. Ralph's eyes widened slightly. The news reports said you were dead. The news reports were wrong. I have evidence of a conspiracy within your military, evidence of planned genocide against human colonies, and I need your help to stop it. Why should I believe you? Because I'm sending you data right now. Look at it. Check the authentication codes. Verify the sources. Hansol initiated the transfer. And because if I'm lying, you lose nothing. But if I'm telling the truth and you do nothing, you'll have the blood of millions on your hands. Ralph was silent for a long moment, reading the data as it came through. His expression grew darker with each passing second. This is treason, he finally said. Yes, if this is real, it goes all the way to the top. High Arbiter Velmoth himself. I know. They'll kill both of us if we move against them. They're already trying to kill me, Hansol said. The question is whether you're willing to risk it to save innocent lives. Ralph's clawed hand clenched into a fist. Then he nodded slowly. Tell me what you need. The asteroid belt was cold and dark, lit only by distant stars. Hansol floated in the cargo bay of Hyunwoo's ship, checking his equipment one last time. They were 3 hours from the weapons depot, and his heart was beating faster than he wanted to admit. You sure about this? Daejung asked. He had insisted on coming, despite Hansol's protests. No, Hansol admitted. But we're doing it anyway. Mireille approached them. She was a combat engineer from Earth's Defense Force, one of 5 soldiers who had arrived with Admiral Sung-min's fleet. When news of the conspiracy had spread, Earth had responded fast. Not with an invasion, but with a protective force. A message that humanity wouldn't be slaughtered quietly. Final briefing, Mireille said, projecting a hologram of the depot. The facility is built into asteroid KR 7743. It has 24 levels, mostly storage. Security is automated, with a garrison of 30 Vrathan soldiers on the command level. Sub-Commander Ralph said he could get us access codes, Hyunwoo said. He did. Mireille highlighted several entry points. But the codes will only work for 12 minutes before the system flags them as suspicious. We need to be in, grab evidence, and out before that. What kind of evidence are we looking for? Daejung asked. Weapon shipment logs, Hansol said. Communications between the conspirators. Anything that proves the depot is connected to the planned attacks on human colonies. And if we run into the garrison, we avoid them if possible. Mireille said flatly. Engage only if necessary. Our goal is evidence, not a firefight. The ship shuddered as they began their approach. Through the viewport, the asteroid grew larger, its surface pocked with craters and mining scars. The depot entrance was marked by a set of heavy blast doors, currently closed. Transmitting access codes, their pilot announced. A tense moment passed. Then, the doors began to open. "We're in," Hyunwoo said. "Let's move fast." The ship docked in a pressurized hangar. Han Sol, Dae-jung, Mi-rae, and 3 other soldiers exited quickly. The hangar was empty, automated systems humming quietly. Emergency lights cast everything in red. 12 minutes starting now, Mi-rae said, checking her wrist display. They moved through the depot's corridors at a quick pace. Han Sol had memorized the layout, but seeing it in person was different. Everything was Vrothan-sized, built for beings larger than humans. The ceilings were high, the corridors wide. They reached the command level without incident. The security office was locked, but Han Sol bypassed the mechanism in 40 seconds. Inside, rows of computer terminals blinked with status updates. "Start downloading," Han Sol said, plugging in multiple data drives. "Everything. We sort it later." The others spread out, securing the room and watching for patrols. Dae-jung stood by the door, a plasma pistol in his hand. He looked nervous, but his grip was steady. Data flowed across the screens. Shipment manifests, weapons inventories, communication logs. Han Sol's eyes scanned rapidly, looking for the key pieces. There, a message from Commander Thexal about contingency operations. There, a schedule for deploying attack ships to human colonies. There, payment records for mercenaries hired to make the attacks look like independent actions. "Got it," Han Sol breathed. "This is everything. This proves the whole conspiracy." 8 minutes left, Mi-rae warned. Then alarms began blaring. "Contact," one of the soldiers shouted. 4 Vrathan guards, coming from the east corridor. "They're early," Hyunwoo snarled. Someone must have triggered a silent alarm. "Keep downloading." Han Sol's fingers flew across the keyboard. Just another minute. Plasma fire erupted in the corridor. Mi-rae and her team returned fire, using the doorframe as cover. The Vrothan weapons were more powerful, but the humans were better positioned. 30 seconds, Han Sol shouted over the noise. A plasma bolt seared past Dae-jung's head, scorching the wall behind him. He fired back, his shot taking a Vrathan guard in the shoulder. The guard roared in pain but kept advancing. 20 seconds. More alarms. More Vrothan soldiers appearing. "We need to go," Mi-rae shouted. "Now." 10 seconds. A grenade bounced into the room. Hyunwoo kicked it back into the corridor. The explosion shook the walls, and the firing stopped temporarily. "Done." Han Sol yanked the data drives free. "Move." They retreated through the corridors, fighting as they went. The Vrothan soldiers were tough and well-trained, but they were also cautious. They didn't expect humans to fight so fiercely. One of Mi-rae's soldiers went down with a plasma burn to the leg. Hyunwoo grabbed him and kept running. They burst into the hangar where their ship waited. The pilot already had the engines hot. Everyone on board. Mi-rae covered their retreat, her rifle spitting plasma in controlled bursts. Han Sol and Dae-jung reached the ship first. Then Hyunwoo, with the wounded soldier. Then the other 2 soldiers. Mi-rae came last, still firing. "Go!" she shouted. "Go! Go! Go!" The ship's doors slammed shut as the engines roared to life. Plasma fire splashed against the hull, but the shields held. They launched from the hangar at maximum acceleration, the asteroid falling away behind them. "Status?" The pilot called back. "1 wounded, non-critical," Mi-rae reported. Everyone else intact. Han Sol slumped against the wall, clutching the data drives to his chest. They had done it. They had the evidence. But the fight wasn't over. Admiral Sung Min's fleet was waiting at the rendezvous point, 3 heavy cruisers and a carrier. It was a fraction of Earth's full military strength, but it was enough to make a statement. Han Sol was brought aboard the flagship Times Sol's Pride **. Admiral Sung Min met him in the briefing room, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "You're the engineer who started all this," she said. "I'm the engineer who wouldn't stay dead," Han Sol corrected. "Same thing." She gestured to the data drives. "Is that the evidence?" "Everything. Enough to expose the conspiracy and prove what they planned. Then let's broadcast it." Admiral Sung Min turned to her communications officer. "Prepare a transmission to all networks. Military, civilian, news feeds, everything." "Admiral," one of her staff officers said hesitantly, "if we do this, the Vrathan Empire will see it as an act of war. They already committed an act of war when they tried to frame our people for genocide." The Admiral's voice was ice. "We're not starting a fight. We're finishing one." The transmission went out on all frequencies. Within minutes, every major network in the sector was broadcasting the evidence. Shipment logs, communication transcripts, payment records, all of it authenticated, verified, impossible to deny. The reaction was immediate. Human colonies mobilized their defenses. Other species in the Galactic Concordance demanded explanations. News organizations called for investigations. And on the Vrathan flagship Times Eternal Dominion **, Commander Thexal watched his conspiracy crumble. He tried to flee. He packed his personal files, erased what he could, and commandeered a fast courier ship. But he hadn't counted on one thing. Han Sol had anticipated this. The engineer had planted a tracking subroutine in the data he'd leaked. A small program that would alert him if anyone tried to run using the conspiracy's escape routes. When Thexal's ship launched, Han Sol knew exactly where he was going. "He's heading for the neutral zone," Han Sol told Mireille. "If he reaches it, he can claim asylum and avoid prosecution. Then we stop him before he gets there." Mireille's smile was cold. "You want to come? I wouldn't miss it." They took a fast interceptor, designed for speed over firepower. The chase lasted 3 hours, a race through asteroid fields and past monitoring stations. Thexal's ship was faster, but Han Sol had planned the intercept route perfectly. They caught him at a refueling station on the edge of Vrathan space. Thexal's ship was docked, taking on supplies for the long journey to the neutral zone. Mireille's team breached the station's docking bay. Han Sol came with them, wearing borrowed armor and carrying a plasma cutter instead of a weapon. They found Thexal in his ship's cargo bay, loading the last of his supplies. When he saw them, his eyes blazed with hatred. "You," he snarled at Han Sol. "You should be dead." "So I've been told." Han Sol stepped forward. "But I'm not, and now you're going to answer for what you did." Thexal laughed, a harsh sound. "You think you've won? This changes nothing. My people will never truly accept yours. The alliance is temporary. Eventually, humanity will be crushed." "Maybe," Han Sol said. "But not today." Thexal moved fast, faster than Han Sol expected. The Vrathan commander was a trained warrior, his strength far beyond human normal. He grabbed a plasma rifle from the wall and fired. Mireille's shield absorbed the blast, but the impact threw her backward. Thexal charged, roaring. Han Sol didn't try to fight him hand to hand. He'd spent 3 days in the station's maintenance tunnels, preparing for this moment. As Thexal charged, Han Sol triggered the plasma cutter. Not at Thexal, at the floor. The metal plating gave way, and the gravity generators Han Sol had reprogrammed kicked in. Thexal suddenly weighed 3 times normal. He crashed to the deck, unable to move under his own enhanced weight. "I'm an engineer," Han Sol said quietly. "I don't win by being stronger. I win by being smarter." Mireille moved forward with stasis cuffs. Within minutes, Thexal was secured, helpless, and furious. They brought him back to face justice. The Galactic Concordance had already sent Prelate Vex Thora to oversee the trial. High Arbiter Velmoth and 11 other conspirators were in custody. Han Sol testified for 6 hours, presenting his evidence piece by piece. The tribunal listened in silence as the full scope of the conspiracy was revealed. When it was over, Velmoth was removed from power. Texal was sentenced to imprisonment. The conspiracy was broken, and Han Sol, the engineer who wouldn't die, finally allowed himself to rest. 6 months after the trial, Han Sol stood in the gardens of the Galactic Concordance headquarters. The building was enormous, a structure that housed representatives from 40 different species. Behind him, through walls of transparent crystal, he could see the assembled delegates waiting for the human president to speak. "You look nervous," Bora said. She had come to the capital world as part of the human delegation, representing the colonies. "I am nervous," Han Sol admitted. "This is bigger than fixing an engine or surviving an execution. This is about the future. You'll do fine." Daejung joined them, wearing the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. He had been promoted after the conspiracy was exposed, his role in helping his brother recognized officially. "They're ready for you," Daejung said. "President Yujin is about to begin." They moved inside, taking their seats among the human delegation. The chamber was circular, with seating arranged in tiers. At the center, a raised platform held the speaker's podium. President Yujin walked to the podium. She was a small woman with gray hair and a presence that commanded attention. She had been a professor of interstellar law before becoming president, and she understood exactly what this moment meant. "Representatives of the Galactic Concordance," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "6 months ago, my people faced an existential threat. A conspiracy within the Vrathan Empire sought to destroy human colonies and break the treaty between our peoples. They believed humanity was weak, primitive, and easy to eliminate." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They were wrong. Not because we are stronger than the Vrathan. We are not. Not because we have superior technology. We do not. They were wrong because they underestimated the most important human quality: our refusal to accept impossible odds." President Yujin gestured to the display behind her, which showed images of Han Sol's escape pod, the wreckage on Threshold 9, and finally Han Sol himself walking out of his makeshift shelter. "This is Han Sol, a human engineer. The Vrathan Empire declared him dead. They executed him by orbital drop into a gas giant. His pod disintegrated in the atmosphere. By every reasonable measure, he should have died." The chamber was completely silent. But he survived. He survived by rewriting computer code, while using his own body as a power source. He survived by turning system failures into thrust control. He survived by building a transmitter from wreckage and calling for help. He survived because giving up was not an option. President Yujin's voice grew stronger. "This is what humanity brings to the galactic community. Not the strongest military, not the most advanced technology, but the absolute refusal to accept defeat, the determination to find solutions where none should exist. The stubborn insistence that impossible just means it hasn't been done yet." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. "Today, I present the human doctrine, a set of principles that will guide our interactions with all spacefaring civilizations. First, we will treat all species as equals, regardless of their age or technological advancement. Second, we will share our innovations freely with those who approach in good faith. Third, we will defend ourselves and our allies with every resource at our disposal. And fourth, we will never, ever, accept that a problem cannot be solved." The display changed, showing human engineers working alongside Vrathan reformists, building new technologies together. The conspiracy failed. Not just because one man survived, but because good people from both our species chose truth over loyalty. Sub-Commander Routh risked his career to help expose the conspiracy. Inquisitor Kreshvan chose investigation over convenience. Chancellor Dex Thrawn has worked tirelessly to reform the Vrathan military. President Yujin smiled. The universe tried to kill Han Sol. Instead, it got a lesson in human persistence. I hope we can all learn from that lesson together. She stepped down from the podium. The chamber erupted in a mixture of reactions. Some delegates applauded. Others looked thoughtful. A few, mostly from species aligned with the old Vrothan regime, looked hostile. Chancellor Dexthron, the new Vrothan representative, stood. He was younger than Velmoth had been, with brighter scales and a reputation for progressive thinking. On behalf of the reformed Vrothan government, he said, I acknowledge the crimes committed by members of our military. We accept responsibility and commit to ensuring such atrocities never occur again. The treaty with humanity will be honored and expanded. More applause. Han Sol watched it all from his seat, feeling strange. He had never wanted to be a symbol. He had just wanted to survive and expose the truth. After the session ended, dozens of delegates approached the human section. They wanted to meet Han Sol, to shake his hand, to hear his story directly. He answered their questions politely, but he could feel exhaustion settling in. Finally, Jiwoo rescued him, pulling him away from a particularly enthusiastic ambassador from a species he didn't recognize. Come on, she said. You've done enough diplomacy for one day. They found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The capital world was beautiful, covered in crystalline towers that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. How does it feel? Jiwoo asked. Being the most famous human in the galaxy? Terrible, Han Sol said honestly. I liked it better when I was just fixing engines. You can never go back to just fixing engines. You're a symbol now. I didn't ask to be a symbol. Symbols never do. Jiwoo looked out at the city. But that doesn't make them less important. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jiwoo asked the question she'd been holding back. What are you going to do now? President Yujin offered you a position in the government. Admiral Sung Min wants you to join the military as a chief engineer. Half the corporations in human space want to hire you. Han Sol shook his head. I'm not doing any of that. Then what? I'm going back to Threshold 9. Back to the colony. He turned to face her. Taemin and I are starting something. An engineering guild. A place where humans and aliens can learn together, work together. No politics, no military ranks. Just people solving problems. Jiwoo smiled. That sounds like you. Jiwoo. Jiwoo. Come with me. Run the administrative side. You're good at dealing with bureaucracy. Are you asking me to leave a prestigious government position to go back to a mining colony? Yes. Okay. Han Sol blinked. Really? Really? Someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed again. Jiwoo laughed. Besides, I miss the colony. I miss working with people instead of politics. Over the next 3 months, they built the guild. Taemin provided funding from his mining operations. Bo-Ra set up a medical facility. Daejung convinced Earth's government to provide equipment and supplies. Even Sub-Commander Ralph contributed, sending Vrothan engineers who wanted to learn from humans. The guild's headquarters was built on the site where Han Sol's escape pod had crashed. They kept part of the wreckage as a monument, a reminder of where it all started. Students came from across human space and beyond. Young engineers, eager to learn. Experienced professionals looking for new challenges. Even some Vrothan, who wanted to understand human methods. Jaehoon was one of the first students. He was 17, brilliant, and fascinated by Han Sol's survival story. He followed Han Sol around the workshop, asking endless questions. How did you know the stabilizers could be reprogrammed? He asked one day. I didn't know, Han Sol admitted. I hoped. Sometimes that's enough. But what if you'd been wrong? Then I would have died. But I was going to die anyway, so I might as well try something. Jaehoon thought about this. Is that the secret? Just trying things even when they seem impossible? Part of it. The other part is understanding that systems are designed by people. And people make mistakes. Every system has weaknesses. If you look hard enough, they were working on a prototype engine. One that combined human innovation with Vrathan power systems. It was the kind of project that would have been impossible a year ago, before the conspiracy was exposed. Teacher Han Sol, another student called. The power coupling is overheating again. Han Sol went to help, with Jae Hoon following close behind. The workshop was loud with the sounds of construction, welding, and machines being tested. It was chaotic and beautiful. That evening, Bo-ra found Han Sol in his private office. He was reviewing applications from new students, trying to decide who to accept. "You work too much," she said, setting down a cup of tea. "Says the doctor who was in surgery for 12 hours yesterday. That's different. That's my job." She sat across from him. "This is supposed to be your passion, not another job. It is my passion, teaching these kids, building something that lasts." "I know." She reached across the desk and took his hand. "I'm proud of you. What you've built here, it's changing things." Han Sol looked at their joined hands. Over the past months, something had developed between them. Something that felt solid and real, built on shared experience and mutual respect. "The Empire declared me dead," he said quietly. "For a while there, falling through that atmosphere, I thought they might be right. Everything hurt. The pod was breaking apart. It would have been easy to just give up. But you didn't." "No. Because I kept thinking about all the people who would suffer if the conspiracy succeeded. About my brother. About Ji-woo. About the thousands of colonists who had no idea they were being targeted." He squeezed her hand gently. "I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them prove that humans were weak. You didn't just prove them wrong. You changed the entire relationship between humanity and the Vrathan Empire. We changed it. All of us together." Han Sol gestured to the window, where students were still working even though it was late. "And we're going to keep changing it, one engineer at a time." A week later, Han Sol gave a speech to the graduating class of the Guild's first cohort. 23 students, human and alien, who had completed the intensive training program. "You came here to learn how to solve impossible problems," he told them. "I hope we taught you that. But more importantly, I hope we taught you why it matters." He pulled up the holographic image of the gas giant that had nearly killed him. "This planet was supposed to be my grave. The Vrathan Empire dropped me into its atmosphere in a failing pod. Certain I would die. They were wrong. Not because I was special, but because I refused to accept their conclusion." He turned to face the students directly. "Each of you will face impossible situations. Maybe not orbital drops, but challenges that seem insurmountable. When that happens, remember this. Every system can be understood. Every problem has a solution. And giving up is a choice, not a requirement." He smiled, the same smile he'd worn walking out of the wreckage 6 months ago. "The Empire declared me dead. I built a transmitter and called for help. They tried to silence the truth. We broadcast it to the galaxy. They thought humans were weak. We showed them what persistence looks like." The students were listening intently, hanging on every word. "You're walking out of here with skills and knowledge. But the most important thing you're taking is this. You are the species, the generation, the people who turn problems into solutions. Don't ever forget that." The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, as students celebrated with their families, Han Sol stood on the observation deck, looking out at Threshold 9's sunset. The sky was painted in brilliant colors, purple and gold and deep red. Daejung joined him, carrying 2 bottles of something that probably wasn't regulations compliant. "To the dead man who wouldn't stay dead," Daejung said, offering 1 bottle. "To family who never gave up," Han Sol replied. They drank in silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Somewhere above them, the Time's Eternal Dominion Times was still in orbit. But Commander Thexol was gone, replaced by officers who understood that humanity was not an enemy to be destroyed, but a partner to be respected. "Do you ever regret it?" Daejung asked. "Everything that happened?" Han Sol thought about the question seriously. He thought about the broken ribs and the burns. About the terror of falling through an atmosphere in a pod designed to kill him, about the months of investigation and the trial and the weight of being a symbol. Then he thought about the guild. About the students learning to see problems as opportunities. About Bo-Ra and Ji-Woo. And all the people who had risked everything to stand with him. About the future being built. One impossible solution at a time. No, he said finally. I don't regret any of it. Below them, the colony lights began to glow as darkness fell. Human and Vrothan engineers worked side by side in the workshops. Students from a dozen species shared meals and stories and dreams of what they would build next. The Empire had declared him dead, but Han Sol had built something better than survival. He had built a future.